What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. We're two-manning it today, but it's me and the cuzzo. Ruben had to take care of some pet things. Hopefully, Ruben's all good. Hopefully, he's here together next week. But yeah, Christian, how are you? First of all, congratulations. No more school.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm doing better than it probably was last time I was on an episode. Say that.
Nice, nice. But I mean, how have you been feeling about this first round? I know you've been been able to watch like a little sparingly, given with school and all that, but seeing how everything's shaking up, what's like your overall outlook, you'd say?
I'd say this is actually one of the more entertaining first rounds we've had in a while. Like in the NBA picture, like there's been like some stories here and there in the last few years, but like I think from at least what I've been keeping up with, I think every round in some to some extent, maybe not the Philadelphia and Nets series obviously, but every other maybe series has had some sort of entertainment. So I think it's been a pretty good first round.
No doubt. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So today's little agenda, we're kind of going on the fly, but for the most part, we're gonna give some quick thoughts about today's games, and then we just got a bunch of questions to kind of work through. First of all, though, let's start off with the Celtics and the Hawks. I mean, I think Trae Young was Trae Young. You really saw how he had more room to operate, and he really willed the Hawks to the win. But I think similar to the Heat win, it's there's you can take some solace knowing that Trae had to go nuclear to really give him even a chance. So I still think the Celtics take care of business. No, I don't know if it's next game, but I don't think the Hawks complete the 3-1 comeback. And then next up we had the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. Minnesota, I think, had the benefit of the whistle for a lot of the game. However, Jokic and Murray really willed them to the second round. And I think a comment I saw on a post was like, these are the moments that really make superstars. Because I mean, you saw that last possession where Ant, had a good look, just didn't go in. Which, first of all, I mean, how high are you on Anthony Edwards? Do you think he's gonna go like crazy next year?
I'm pretty high on Anthony Edwards, but I think his trajectory is sort of like stagnant when he's around players he's around right now. Meaning, I think Cat and Rudy Gobert don't propel him to be a better player. Like they're not going to be pieces I see around him if he is going to reach like the level that I think people see in him.
Mm,
And he could, have one of those careers that's like pitfalled by something like that.
that's a good point. Yeah, I think the way the team's constructed is constructed where you're basing it on Cat and Ant rather than kind of fully pulling into Ant. But yeah, I agree. It's a
Yeah.
good point. Suns and Clippers. I mean, this game just ended. Crazy fourth quarter to say the least. I mean, Devin Booker went nuclear. I think he had 40, ended with 47, 49.
Yeah.
Crazy, you know, given that a lot of them were on buckets and not necessarily him bitching about calls. But I mean, man, I think there's another one where, despite the fact that the Suns won, I think it says more to the fact that they, like a G League team, they didn't sweep them kind of thing. You had that one game with Kawhi, but outside of that, you know, the Clippers were down their two best players. I mean, what were your opinions on that fourth quarter? Because I mean, just to preface it, I think heading into it, you know, the Clippers played a really solid first half. I think they were leading with 9, and then the third quarter, Devin Booker like alone outscored the Clippers, and then fourth quarter, it seemed like it was a little out of reach, but then all of a sudden they started hitting a bunch of shots. What did you think about that fourth quarter?
I think the fourth quarter was actually because I know at one point they were leading, I think it was by 15, maybe even 17, the Suns, clarify. And they just gave up like four threes in a row and they had to like call timeout. And so
Yeah.
like that last half was like actually competitive. Like I thought it would maybe be wraps because of that third quarter. But I don't know. I think even though we're like you touched on it, I don't find it like all that impressive that this Suns team couldn't really bury the Clippers team today the way that they should have. Like obviously basketball is basketball and props to like people like Norman Powell who was hooping out there for the most part. Except that maybe turnover at the end there. But
Mm.
um, yeah, I mean, I'd say I'd be interested to see them get tested by a healthy team because yeah, I think if that Clippers team hypothetically had Kawhi and PG, I think this is a whole different story
Oh
on it.
yeah. I mean the next round is going to be solid because I mean we'll talk about it later for sure, but it's going to be Clippers and no, not Clippers, the Suns and the Nuggets. So
Yeah,
it's going to be
exactly.
nasty. But let's get right into it. First bit of news: Ime Udoka, no longer with the Celtics. We all know how that went. He's going to head over to the Houston Rockets. So I guess main thing is, how do you think it's going to go?
I think it's going to be good for the Rockets. I hope that Ime Udoka really emphasizes building an identity for the Rockets because I think that's one of the biggest narratives around them is that they kind of play not meaningless basketball in the sense that they're tanking, but it's just even in the way they played, like they don't have any sort of structure or framework as to why they are the team they are. So I think it'll be very important for like Ime Doka to look at players like Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun and see how like those two players like actually bring out the best in each other. Because I think that's what Ime Udoka like kind of did for the Celtics a lot in a lot of the ways where there was this criticism between the two Jays not being able to work together and like he kind of pretty much built the whole sort of system where they can play like these two big wings and like consecutively make them work. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously not the same situation for the Rockets, but I think he'll be capable of doing something like that or a version of that for the Rockets, hopefully. What
Yeah,
about you?
I agree. I think it's just a matter of if he's able to set a culture. You know,
Yeah,
I think when you look at the situations he's been a part of, I don't think it's necessarily that there's been a culture that he's instilled, but he's kind of walked into one. Brooklyn's kind of a different situation because I was kind of like, there's no culture, but just by the fact that you have like three of the best players in their prime or like on the outside of it, but not too far removed, there wasn't really a big need for that. And then with the Celtics, it was like, I think obviously Brad Stevens set a huge precedence, but I think it's just that's also
exactly.
like when you're one of those original teams, there's already a culture embedded. There's not really a need to like shift the narrative or anything like that. And I agree. I think you look at guys like Jalen Green, Alprin Shengun. I think Jabari Smith ended the year off really good or really well. Hopefully he's able to build off of that. And there's just a lot of things that I think they need to solidify. You know, there's a
Yeah,
lot of players on that team, a lot of young guys especially. And I think you just got to look at finding some guys, who are going to stick and maybe using some other guys as like trade pieces to potentially land like a big name. Like, Jalen Brown's obviously on the market. We'll see how that goes. And then, there's all the rumors about James Harden coming back. So I think Houston's another team that it's just going to be interesting to see what they're doing just based on the fact that, you know, there's a big light in terms of what their flaws are. And now they have all this money and see what they do with it. But yeah, I think another guy I'm really high on as well. I think a guy that Ime is going to love is Tari Eason, you know,
yeah.
LSU boy, Seattle by some way, I think. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be successful in the first year. Just, you know, working your way back from that whole situation. And obviously, the Rockets are still a young team. I think it's going to be a multiple year thing. And I think year 2 or 3 is maybe when we'll start to see like decent payoff. All right, next question I want to talk about. So, obviously, we had a lot of series close out today. First one, obviously, being the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. My question here: does this series play out differently with a fully healthy Timberwolves teams? Now, we all know what happened last day of the regular season. Boom. No McDaniels, Kyle Anderson, and Rudy get into it. But not only that, they lost Naz Reid like late into the season, as well as Kyle Anderson wasn't available for this last game with some like eye injury. But I mean, when you look at it, those are three of their like top rotational players, especially, McDaniels, a guy that, everybody's kind of pegged in as an all NBA defender. And when you just look at the loss of those guys, three solid rotational guys, do you think this series plays out any differently?
If I'm being honest, I think maybe they take one more game, but
Mm,
at most, like in the best picture. But I think if you look at that Nuggets team, like not to like really switch over the question too much, but you just look at like players like I think the biggest example is Jamal Murray. Like he is literally like a playoff player. Like I think it was the statistic that was showing up on Sunday when we were watching the game, but he like raises his points per game like almost by literally 10 like in the playoff picture. And so I think they're just they're at a point where they've had a lot of experience like in the playoffs with those two players specifically with Jokic and Jamal Murray. And I just think like rotationally like the Nuggets are just too sound to really give up a lot of games to like a sort of like what feels like a defenseless like Minnesota team, you know, even though they have Rudy Gobert, whatever. Um, I just don't think they really take any games off of them. I even think that game that they won, like it was, you know, just because Ant willed them to a win. But that game could have just been done too, honestly.
I agree. I think Nuggets still pull it out, but I feel like it goes all the way to 7. Because I mean,
Seven.
the main thing is that you got McDaniel's, obviously, all NBA defender as I mentioned earlier, and really started to showcase an offensive like bag to an extent. And when you throw that, and obviously I would assume that he'd be tailing Jamal Murray for most of the game. And then through that, I think you let Ant, because there were possessions where Ant was like, you know, guarding Jamal Murray, and not to say that Ant can't guard, but when you're exerting a lot of your energy trying to guard an offensive talent like Jamal Murray, the offense is going to suffer a tad. And if you're able to alleviate that even slightly, maybe Anthony Edwards goes like 4 for 7 rather than like 2 for 5 kind of thing, something along those lines. And then Nas Reed, I think, is another body you could throw into Jokic. And then Kyle Anderson, obviously being out for that last game. I mean, as much as Cat and Rudy are the big names on that team because of like the contracts they have, I think you really see how Kyle Anderson's the leader on that team. Obviously not having that guy for the last game. Timberwolves were close, but weren't able to really fully pull it out. So I think as much as it still goes to the Nuggets, I think it's a lot more competitive than it would be. So, you know,
That's fair.
yeah. And I think the Timberwolves have like a decent blueprint for how shitty their situation is. They got guys like Nikhil Alexander Walker that really showed out this playoff run, or if you can really even really call it a run. And they have guys that I think can mesh well together and are able to develop together. And I think that's really their only avenue because obviously they got no draft picks. Next question. Has Trae Young become underrated?
Uh, that's a tough question because I think it really just depends who you ask. Because I think Trae Young is one of the NBA's greatest villains. I think that's been made clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you look at a villain, you definitely don't like try to paint them as like a unsung hero, like someone who is underrated. You always want to say he's overrated, and that's really why people chant that. That being said, I do think he is probably at this point perfectly rated or slightly overrated. I just think it's been painted in his game that, and it's something you can't, you know, really at this point. You can ridicule him for it, but you know, nothing's going to change is his defensive game. I just think, like, as far as his offensive bag goes, like, I think people are self aware of it, but I think the problem is that, like, his defense is just like insufferable on the court, and it's why this Hawks team, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of others as well, has the ceiling that they have. That being said, he's obviously shown like through and through that he's been like one of the best players in the NBA, like arguably a top 10 player. Um, and then you really look at even last year when he had, was it the most points and assists in the league?
Yeah, I think prior to this year, he's been the leader of
Yeah.
that the past few years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of an underrated player, I think you think of someone who just doesn't get enough credit. But I think he would get more credit if his team was playing winning basketball, you know? So I think that's my take on that. What do you think?
You know, I'm starting to think Trey Young's becoming a little underrated. Just based on the fact of like, you look at what happened this year, no All Star nod, which is crazy, but I think that's a lot more
That
to do
is
with
that is
like
crazy.
yeah, I think that's a lot more to do with the team record. And you had the beef with Nate McMillan kind of painted Trey Young in this whole like uncoachable light, which I don't
Mm,
necessarily agree with because I think, you know, I think the honeymoon phase just ended. And then when shit got real, you realize that like one of the most defensive minded coaches isn't really going to work out with Trey Young. And you have these all these trade rumors. The fact that like they're listening to calls, which is I think crazy because I mean, as we mentioned, Trey Young's one of the best offensive talents in the entire NBA. And I think the thing that's really made him become underrated, I think, is when you look at this year's Hawks team. You know, I think I was somebody who was very high on them. When you look at it on paper, you paired Trey Young with one of the best, if not the best, defensive like guards in the league outside of maybe Drew Holiday. And it seems like it's a match that's supposed to work, but then when you look at their game as well, Jamal Murray is a guy, or not Jamal Murray, DeJounte Murray is a guy who really needs the ball to be effective. He's not really known for like spotting up in a corner. But I think you saw in today's game where you don't have another really ball dominant guy like DeJounte Murray. You let Trey Young be Trey Young and letting him kind of, take 30, 40 shots. And they were able to will out a win. And I think the main thing is that Trey Young had a lot more room to operate. Not having a guy as ball dominant, being able to like really, I guess, have a string on the ball like that. I think showcased how the Hawks team they can stay in games, but I think you're right. The defensive like liabilities, I don't think nobody wants Trey Young to be like an all NBA defender like Chris Paul. You
yeah,
know, I think they just want him to compete, and there are times where he shows spurts of it, and there are times where he obviously doesn't. I'm not gonna lie, I'm calling it here. I think next year Hawks gonna be decent.
I think so as
Yeah, I
well.
don't I don't think like nothing like a contender or anything like that, but
Top,
top
I'd say top.
six, yeah, I agree. I think they're looking like a fourth, maybe not fifth or sixth seed. I think
Mm,
because I
all
mean you
right,
get a full off season, you get another like run through with like Dejounte and Trey. Maybe they'll go back to the crossover in Seattle, and then you get a full training camp with a new coach and Quinn Snyder, and they look decent under Quinn. I mean, obviously they're looking like they might lose this series still, but you know,
they will.
yeah.
I
with
I
with
don't.
the two wins they've been able to garner, I mean, shit.
Yeah, I mean, if they can really have like a Hail Mary series, then maybe. But this is the question I had to ask you because I think this is like what determines if he's overrated or underrated in some sense. But do you think there's a better roster you can still build around Trey Young for this team to be better for the
Hundred
Hawks to
percent,
be?
100%.
What do you think? Like, obviously, you can make the team even better than it is, but I really think this is one of the best rosters they've had in quite a while. When you really compare, like, because really in the like kind of landscape of the Atlanta Hawks, like you've not really lost a lot of talent, and you've gained a lot of it. Gained a lot more with players like Sadiq Bey, players like Onyeka Okongwu coming into form, and DeAndre Hunter playing like starting minutes, and obviously adding DeJounte Murray, and still having obviously Clint Capella and John Collins, who were like the cornerstone pieces. I just think this is something for me where I'd like maybe they aren't still the right pieces, but like I just can't think of any player you could pair with Trey Young that would like propel him to success. Like surely you could add a Joel Embiid onto the Hawks, and all of a sudden they're a first seed team. But you could say that about any team.
You had Clay Thompson on that team. That shit's nasty. Now, I'm not saying they're gonna get Clay Thompson, but I agree what you're saying. This is the best team, like talent wise, that Trey Young's been like a part of. But as we saw recently in this Clippers Suns fiasco, even though it ended with a loss, talent doesn't mean everything.
No,
I think fit really matters. That's why doesn't really see fitting right now. But I think that's why Milwaukee's successful.
uh,
They have Giannis. They have a closer slash guy who's able to operate off ball and Chris Middleton. You
yeah,
have Drew Holiday who's able to run the offense as well. I think they're really just missing. They're missing complementing pieces. I think that's why John Collins has really went from like him and Trae are like going to be a super solid duo to now like this guy's ass. Because prior to
Yeah,
like the past few games, because I mean his shots looking like he's starting to come back, he couldn't hit like the side of a barn, and now he's starting to bring it back a little bit. I'm still on the fence with John Collins, but I look at a guy like AJ Griffin Jr., who was like, their rookie this year. I'm really high on him. He was stroking that motherfucker. I think you let him get some playoff burn, let him get some more mints under his belt. And I think him and Trae could work really well together because, he's a guy, really drafted a Duke for his shooting ability, his ability to catch and shoot as well. And he had demonstrated that slightly, throughout the year. And I think there are pieces to where they can build a solid team, but I think it's also to the point where there's a lot of talent and they're not necessarily molding it to the right standards to form the team around Trae. Because I think if there's like validity to the rumors, that obviously means they're not fully convinced that Trae can be their like 100% guy.
I'm not either.
You don't think so?
I don't know. I think he like is definitely a cornerstone piece for our team,
Mm,
and I do agree that like maybe the right pieces are just not around him yet. But I think he's just one of those players that it's tough to say that with because there's like I think there is just players in the league that are so talented, but like no matter who you pair them with, like winning basketball just might not be their name, you know?
yeah, I
Like
think with the league today, it's like, and even overall, it's really hard to have your point guard be like the main guy.
yeah, it's not common at all, really.
Yeah, because I mean, off the top of your head, who can you think of that was like?
It's only Steph Curry, honestly, and John Morant.
And even then, that's like a big anomaly because you got
Yeah,
Draymond, who's like their primary
exactly.
initiator. Yeah,
Yeah, like you got players on those teams that are just like yeah, and anomalies and like talents that you haven't really seen before. Like Draymond is a, I would say in a lot of ways is a new archetype to basketball.
mm,
But and same with John Morant having like a defensive juggernaut in Jaren Jackson Jr. Like those aren't things that I think like every team just has. Like so yeah, I do think Trey Young would need sort of an anomaly type of player to really make him better.
yeah.
Like at
I
this point.
mean, off the top of my head, I feel like when you think about teams that have won chips, like Zeke, the OG Isaiah Thomas is like the only guy I could think of to where he was their point guard and he was really like the
The
main
guy.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah. There's I mean, yeah, like you can't really say Magic Johnson was that guy when
because he had
he's
he had
he
Kareem
had the best
Abdul-Jabbar and
player
all that.
ever. Yeah, I don't think there is a team really if you really just keep scrolling back. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens with the Hawks. I think they're capable of having him as the main guy. I think is what I'm trying to say, but it would take a lot for him to be the main guy.
They should get Mikal Bridges.
Oh yeah, Mikal Bridges is an anomaly player. I
Mikal
disagree.
Bridges, you get Mikal for DeJounte, maybe throw in a few sweeteners. I don't think it necessarily happens because I don't think they really have the draft capital to fully facilitate a trade like that. But that would be, I think. I don't think that's like the final piece to like put them over the hump, but that's gonna do something for sure.
I agree.
All right, next question. So, you know, I don't know how you think the Grizzlies and Lakers series is gonna go, but I'm assuming you got the Lakers. So my question is, what does the Grizzlies offseason look like, if they lose this series?
Oh man.
And to give a little context, obviously they're down 3-1. Dylan Brooks poked the bear and all that. But they got a couple things to look at with their team because, I think Dylan Brooks is an expiring contract this year. And then in addition, you had Steven Adams, who wasn't able to finish out the year. Brandon Clark, who wasn't finish out the year. So they're really low on size right now, but on paper, they have it.
Right. Man, I don't know. Like, I think when you look at this team, I'm just not convinced on the like the entirety of the I guess starting lineup. Like most of it, I think works. I personally think there's a better player than Dylan Brooks out there. Maybe that's what I would look towards. Because I mean, Xavier Tillman has shown a lot of exceptional talent at his position, and obviously everyone else. I think at this point in the starting lineup is locked in. Like I have full faith in John Desmond and Jaron Jackson Jr. But I think Dylan Brooks is the only player that, like, in my opinion, is like the sort of red flag on this team. I don't think he's the reason they're losing, but I just think like in this day and age in the NBA, like to win the chip, you have to have like 1 through 5, and that's obviously just makes sense. But like when I say that, I mean you can't really have a player that is like just slacking when it comes to the talent or like capabilities that the other players offer. And even Xavier Tillman could be brought into that conversation, but I think he's been showing out a lot in this playoffs that, and even during like the latter half of
Yeah, I
the
mean, as a third stringer, he's been really good.
yeah, he's been doing really good, and they obviously have players coming back in that position. But I just think Dylan Brooks is not like a high quality player for a high quality team, and that's just and maybe I just don't like him. That's my problem too. I
Oh
mean,
man, because that's the Canadian brethren. Well, no, I
no, I don't
agree.
room him as a Canadian. Honestly, I was thinking about this the other day for some reason.
You revoking it?
I was watching the game. Was it? It wasn't yesterday. The day before. It was yesterday. I like literally came home and watched the game yesterday. I was like, man, I do not claim this guy.
Damn. I mean, my main thing to pick with Dylan Brooks is like, I mean, he's not a guy that should be getting 13 shots.
No,
Definitely not
exactly.
that. He's not that. And I think like he's becoming overrated because of how he produces in totality. Defense wise, I mean, obviously outside of like fucking poking the bear and all that, Dylan Brooks is solid.
Yeah,
Outside of that, but then when you add the fact that bringing up his splits here, 33% from the field, 22% from three, that's really what starts to tank his value. And when you look at it, whether it's because he's in a contract year, he wants to show that he's worth like a lot of money, which I don't necessarily think he is at this moment. I think that's when you really start to like go down with that. And I mean, he's making 11.4 this year. He seems like the guy who's going to command something in around the realm of 20 M's. Definitely don't think he's worth that, but I've heard rumors that out if it weren't for the Grizzlies, he'd kind of be out the league. Don't know if
I
I
could.
fully agree with that,
I don't agree
but
with that
yeah, there
personally.
like if there's somebody where he wasn't like he for some reason didn't get offered, he'd sign a minimum, I would say. But yeah, I think an upgrade over Dylan Brooks is definitely should be one of their main focuses. And I mean, they were looking at it because I think they offered 3 or 4 first rounders for Mikal Bridges, and then that got denied.
That would have been game over in my opinion.
Mm,
Because yeah, I just think like you really can't be lacking, especially in that position. He plays the three.
yeah, and that's like probably your most important position now.
Yeah, you're literally coming up against the best players in the league in that position.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I just don't think he. I do. I don't think he would like be out of the league. I just think he's not a starter on any other team, in my opinion.
yeah, that's a good outlook. All
Yeah.
right, let's preview the next series then. How does a Warriors Lakers series play out? You think?
Oh man. See, this is. I think I've prefaced this a lot in previous episodes, but I like. I'm not a casual NBA fan. Like I think I'm more than that, but I just have like these biases I can't get rid of. But I also think they have like rationality to them, and I can always rationalize them somehow. But
So you think the Warriors are sweeping?
I don't think the Warriors are sweeping. The this Lakers team is extremely talented, but I think the Warriors. have what it takes to piece it together, like for a playoff run, like every year. And I think it's because of obviously the cohesion between the three, and even between the three, but not only between the three, but players like Kevon Looney and Andrew Wiggins are obviously, you know, well integrated into the team by now. Jordan Poole was like the highest like points per game player on this team this season, or not points per game, but he had the most total points. Like this team on paper, honestly, is still very good. I think they just like because they had so many holes in the season this year, just with like injuries and also just not coming back exactly the same to start from where they obviously left off, like with missing players like GP2 and kind of him falling out of the rotation, then having players like Dante DiVincenzo not coming back right away, and then them also losing out on
Wiggins was out for a majority of
yeah,
the
Wiggins was out for a
especially
majority, and then
later. Yeah, yeah.
who I'm forgetting. Oh, Otto Porter Jr. left the team. Like things like that. I think they just fell out of it this year. But I think when you really look at the construction of this roster, it's still I think has the genetic makeup of a championship team. Now, do I think they're going to go to the motherland? I can't cap that hard. I don't know if that's the case, but I just think the series I think goes to maybe 6 or 7, but I think the Warriors take it, and I
Damn,
think
man, you ain't got faith in the Dubs. I can't lie, man. I think the road to the West runs through Golden State.
no, I'm saying the Warriors take it.
Mhm.
Wait, you're saying what are you saying?
I think the Warriors are gonna go to the finals.
Oh, you are going the yeah. You think they're going to the finals? Damn,
Yeah,
that's that's more like a little more faith than me.
hey man. For my mother's sake, I got them going to the finals. But nah, I mean, when you look at this team, you know, I it's just the road thing that's like really the big thing with them. And
Exactly.
obviously playing in Sacramento, that's become one of like the biggest home court advantages this year. I mean, there's been stories about how game one it was like deafening. Now, with game five on the horizon, with the fact that, Fox might not be fully healthy, I think this is the game that really decides the series.
I think
Because,
so.
if Golden State wins this, you got to go back to Golden One Center. Game six, Clay on the horizon. Not looking too good for lighting that beam. But yeah, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, I guess because we're obviously jumping to the fact that they're going to win this series, I think the Warriors and Lakers match up really well. There's like obviously advantages to be played on both sides. I think the biggest one, pun intended, is Anthony Davis being with Kevon Looney. And I think Kevon has the ability to hold his own. But, if Anthony Davis starts to really play like Anthony Davis, it's going to be a long series, I think. That's the really big thing there is because, we obviously, everybody's been trying to say like they're good if Anthony Davis wants to take up the mantle and really like be the guy. But we haven't been able to see that. And then when you look at all the role players as well, D'Lo, he's playing like ass. Rui Hachimura has been playing very well. So if he's able to like continue that production, it might be a long night. Austin Reeves, some people are saying he's going to command upwards of 80 million. I don't know about that. Actually, you know what? Just based on the fact that he's playing with the Lakers and he's got that LeBron cosign, he'll probably get that. But seeing how he's gonna like function throughout the playoffs, which he's been super solid to begin with, but we'll see how that factors on later on. But when you look at the Warriors, there is no way anybody can ever guard Stephen Curry 1-on-1, let alone like a whole team at times. And you look at the personnel that the Warriors are gonna have, or that the Lakers have for like to guard Steph,
It's not good.
gonna
It's
be
not.
gonna be scary hours. And then obviously you got Draymond to Kevon to really like contend with AD. But man, I'm excited to see that Wiggins and LeBron matchup. That's gonna be nice. I think that's gonna be one of the really big deciding factors because obviously it might be another Iguodala performance where he held LeBron to like 25, 9 and 7. That's considered stopping him to an extent. But I think Wiggins is going to be able to get his own LeBron for sure, and I think that's one of the marquee matchups to look at. I think. But yeah,
Yeah,
I would say Warriors in six.
6 or 7, I would
Yeah,
say. Yeah,
this is going to be a good
definitely.
series. I mean, the NBA wants this. That LeBron and Steph money is nutty.
Yeah, you already know what's gonna happen.
100%. All right, looking up to this next one, Nuggets and the Suns. How do you think that goes down?
Oh man, I like look at this and I think I don't like the Suns at all. Like honestly, like
That's what I'm thinking too. There's no
uh,
depth.
they don't have the depth, but I think in this particular case, like Denver has to really play like their game of basketball in order to like really keep up with Phoenix. Because Phoenix, I think their game is predicated around shooting the other team out of the game. You know, like
Mm,
they're going to make their buckets. Like you saw it today. Like even though, like obviously they played the Clips, who were a G League team today at best. Like we were mentioning, like they had 130 points. Like, and that was not even off the back of Kevin Durant today. And I think that the problem is that that can come off the back of two different players on their team, and like their big three can give you 100 every night, you know. And they have role players that are still capable of giving you some as well. And I think Denver has that power in their team, but not at the sort of functioning level that Phoenix has. And so I think what you would need to see from Denver is just like playing like very solidified team cohesive basketball. And I think I've talked about how this is like how most championship rosters have been constructed. It's just that their players have to like really show out every night because Phoenix is going to give you 120 every night, like regardless. So I think what I'm trying to say is I see Phoenix taking this series because of just the like overwhelming offensive prowess. But I want to believe in Denver. It's just that I haven't seen it from like obviously they've been the top seed, but I think playoff Durant. I mean, shit, man. I don't I don't like Phoenix. I really and this is like one of the toughest things I've had to say all night, but I do see them taking it because of just Denver's playoff history and the overwhelming offensive strength of Phoenix. I
okay,
think
man, give me
that's what
Denver. Uh,
you want Denver.
Phoenix, you know, we've seen this. We saw it in Game One with the Clippers. Granted, Kawhi was the best player in that entire game, maybe the entire series, arguably. But man, 1 through 4 looks really well or looks really nice, and the rest of it looks a little poopy. Torrey Craig, Ish Wainwright, T.J. Warren, Landry Shamet, Campaign. Their bench leaves a lot to be desired. I feel, and you see how Monty can get out coached at times. You see how Monty can really be over reliant like on his starters. And granted, like you said, they can give you 120 easy, but when you look at a team like Denver that I think has the personnel to match up really well, they have a Michael Porter Jr. who, even though he's not a stout defender, he has the size to match up with KD. And if not, Aaron Gordon, I think, is more than capable of taking that assignment. Jamal Murray and Devin Booker, I think, is something that's going to be crazy to watch. And obviously, Jokic and DeAndre Ayton. It's going to be interesting because I think Jokic mentioned once that Aiden's his toughest guard. So we're gonna see if Aiden's able to take advantage of that. If they're even gonna give him like some burn in the sense of like touches and all that. But I think there's just a lot of things that Phoenix is obviously capable of. But I feel like Denver is more than capable of matching that up. And even then, outside of that, you got Bruce Brown. I think he's a really good, like, solid utility player. He'll be able to guard like 1 through 4. It feels almost you know, Kentavatius Caldwell Pope might have a scorcher of a game. And I just think that, depth is really going to come into play here. And we saw it come into play with the Clippers series. And now when you're playing like a fully healthy team in the Nuggets and a team that's like arguably, they're probably seven deep. Obviously Jamal, Bruce Brown, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, DeAndre Jordan. Nah, but I think there's a lot more cohesiveness. I think that's going to be a big thing too as well. I mean, Jokic and Jamal alone is, oh man, that's going to be nutty. But yeah, I think this is definitely going to be. I hope it's a 7 game series, but I'm thinking 6 or 7.
Mhm.
And in
Yeah.
that, give me the Nuggets. Because I mean, I think the first 2 games at home for Denver, obviously they say like that elevation gets you, and we've seen how Denver, or not necessarily Denver, but Phoenix is a team where they start out a little slow, I feel, but if they're able to really get their win underneath them, third quarter, fourth quarter is really their time to shine. And if Denver's really able to just like punch them really, really hard in the first couple like few minutes and all that, I think that's their key to winning it. But also, man, I mean today's Jokic game was nutty. I think he had like 20, 11, and 12 and 2 blocks and 2 steals. So close to a 5 by 5. But I think we're really due for like a Nikola Jokic like 30, 15, and 17 kind of game. I think we're due for one of those, and I think that's going to come against Phoenix.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, the last one. Are the Bucks coming back from 3-1?
Damn. Honestly, I think so. I think, you know, I'm like I don't hate the Bucks. It's just that they're the biggest competitor to my team. That being said, I can't discredit that the Bucks are still, I think, in my opinion, the best team in the NBA. I think just in terms of roster construction, like I think my like the Boston Celtics like can be 1A 1B with them for sure, and that's why they are 1 and 2 in the East. But I think this Bucks team, like I think you've seen it through the season, wills each game to win, even regardless of players who are missing. And I don't think Jimmy Butler comes out next game being, the Jimmy Butler we saw, was it last night? Um, and that's no shade to him, but I think if Jimmy Butler is like even, you know, not even like 180, if he's not even 90% of that player he was last night, then that that Miami Heat roster cannot take the Bucks because that game was close, but it took three.
100%.
It,
Yeah.
it,
I mean, if
it
Jimmy even misses a couple shots, they lose that game.
yeah, like they like I think what people like are seeing is like like greatness from like a singular player, but that's like from what I was reading up, like that's like I think the fifth highest like scoring game ever in the NBA playoffs or something like that.
Yeah, and I think it was
It's in the
the
top.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I think it's the most by a Miami Heat player, and obviously that's like over guys like
exactly.
Dwayne Wade and LeBron.
Yeah. So he's not giving you 56 like tomorrow. And that being said, like Bam and Kyle Lowry are not giving me that. Tyler Harrow's injured. Duncan Robinson is a waste of contract. Like they just
Man, I can't lie
this
though.
Bucks team.
He was looking like he was on his way to China before these last couple games.
That's what I'm saying. And that yeah, I mean like he's obviously looking better, but this Milwaukee team, if there's a team to come back from 3-1, they're definitely capable of doing it. I see it happening because I just don't think Jimmy Butler is able to give you another night like that.
Hell yeah, man. Let me give you some names: Larry Bird, Hakeem Olajuwon, Steph Curry, LeBron James. All 4 of the greatest players to ever play this beautiful game, as well as all 4 to come back from 3-1. We're gonna add another name to that list, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Because I mean, I'm not gonna lie, everything that could have gone wrong outside of Game 2 has gone wrong for the Bucks. Game 1, Giannis goes out. That throws your whole game plan out the window. Bud's already a guy that we don't really trust to make the adjustments on the fly, and you get punched in the mouth. Game 3, punched in the mouth. Game four, Giannis comes back, has a crazy game. I think we should have been talking about, the what it was like the 32, 12, and 13 that he put up, especially with all those dimes. But man, Jimmy Butler had to go Michael Jordan mode. And man, even looking at it, they were all like a majority of them were buckets. It wasn't like he was like a crazy, crazy foul merchant. Obviously, a bunch of them were like free throws,
Yeah.
but a lot of it was just straight buckets. And I think a lot of it also came down to the fact that Bud kept Chris Middleton on him for a lot of the game. I love Chris Middleton, brought the Bucks a championship, but his knees are cooked. You gotta put Drew Holiday on him,
I do
and if
agree.
not, Giannis Antetokounmpo needs to take that assignment. Because I mean, in like the fourth quarter, especially whenever Giannis was on him, yeah, Jimmy got his, but a lot of those probably looked like some of his more tougher buckets. I feel so. You know, I think again, everything that could have gone wrong for the Bucks has gone wrong so far in this series, but I think that championship pedigree is going to shine through. You know, Giannis, I think, is going to really like have a sense of urgency that we haven't seen since the finals, and we're going to see. I'm going to see the Milwaukee Bucks come back from 3-1. We're going to see that.
I do believe it. Do you think
100.
Cleveland comes back from 3-1?
No, no, man. Cleveland, my
They're
expectations were
disappointing
so
this year.
high. Like I
Yeah,
thought they would peak at like a conference finals. No, no, no bullshit.
I do think so as well.
And then boom, the New York Knickerbockers completely tore up their shit. But I think Cleveland wins this next game at home and then gets flushed down in the Garden.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about that. I
Mm.
think, yeah, they've already shown that they cannot contain.
They just have no wing play.
Yeah, yeah. I got no words on that one. I
Yeah,
was
that
just
one's a.
put it out there for jokes.
I respect that. I respect that. You got any
Yeah.
more questions?
Who do you got winning?
The Bucks.
Yeah, I don't know why I asked that.
If they win, I'm gonna get another tat.
I'd like to see that. I think if Boston were to win, I don't know what tat I would get, but I would consider getting a tat. But
Would you get like would you get the mascot? Actually no, that seems a little too.
fuck no, I don't think
Oh,
so.
you know what you should do? If they win and then one of them drops like a crazy one liner like how KG did, get that put on.
That maybe you're just a clover or something, something light,
Something
something that
light.
like will actually look like a tattoo. Like for me, I mean, I don't know.
You're not a quote guy. You just like illustrations.
I don't. I like. I just tattoos are expensive. I gotta pay off my student loans now that I'm done school.
True.
I can't be fucking around too much.
But I mean, shit, man. This playoffs have been crazy. I'm super excited for how it's gonna like. I don't want to say end, but just how it's shaping up so far. It's gonna be good, 100%. But with that, this has been another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. Any last things you want to say, cousin?
Nah, I got nothing. See you next one.
All right, stay safe, stay blessed. We'll see y'all soon.